So a lot of Math 11 was looking at quadratic functions and equations, so it's really important that we really have a good strong grasp of quadratic functions and their parts, as we'll be using them a lot in Math 12. So the general form of the quadratic function is this form here with the ax squared plus bx plus c. And with all forms, this a factor, this a here, represents a vertical expansion compression. So the bigger a is, the taller the parabola tends to be. And the smaller, if it's smaller than 1, it's what we call a vertical compression. The c value here, the c value is related to the y-intercept. Just like with the mx plus b, that plus c is the y-intercept. Okay, so if we let x equal to 0, we're left with c. This b value probably has the least amount of information that's available to us, but it does actually have something to do with vertical shift. Okay, so we'll be able to relate it to the vertical shift in a way, and there's actually something called Vieta's formula, which relates that b value to where the vertex is. So probably the most important form is this graphing form. It's the most useful to us. And again, just like with the general form, the a value is the same thing. So that a and that a are exactly the same. And this represents our vertical expansion compression. And the reason why the graphing form is really useful is because it tells us exactly where the vertex is. And the vertex is by far the most important point on the parabola. Okay, so that p and q value represents where the vertex is. Okay, so it's a horizontal shift. It represents where we shift it horizontally and where we shift it vertically. And we're going to start looking at this in the next unit. But this idea of inside the function is horizontal, outside is vertical, is an important idea that we're going to start focusing on. The third form is almost as useful as the graphing form, except it doesn't give us the vertex directly. However, it does give us some symmetry, and the symmetry is to do with the roots. Okay, so m and n represents where the graph crosses the x-axis. And again, with the a factor, that a is exactly the same as the a that we had in the other two forms, in the graphing form and in the general form. Okay, it represents a vertical expansion and compression. So anytime we have this symmetry, it's really important to be able to use it. So that's why the graphing form is useful, because it tells us where the vertex is. And the vertex is the center of symmetry. Now, the quadratic form, the factored form, is useful as well, but doesn't give us directly the vertex. However, it does give us symmetrical points. So those zeros are always symmetrical about the zeros are always symmetrical about the vertex. Okay, so no matter where I draw this graph, my zeros are here and here, my vertex is always going to be right in the middle. Okay, so that does help us give us some symmetry. And again, symmetry is very important when it comes to the parabola. So the most important points that we want then for the parabola are, the vertex by far is the most important point. Okay, so I'm just going to highlight that. Okay, so when we're trying to find the quadratic function, okay, the vertex is going to be the most important point because it tells us the middle, tells us how to go symmetrically from to the right and left to get zeros, tells us lots of things. Secondly, the roots are going to be fairly important as well, because again, although they don't directly give us the middle, okay, they are symmetrical coordinates, and they do give us some good information about the graph. Okay, the y-intercept, it's an easy point to get, so we will include that in here. But the y-intercept is, notice that there's not any symmetry to that y-intercept, so the y-intercept can be, it's of limited use, but it's an easy coordinate to get because we just plug in 0 and we can get the y-intercept. And lastly, the axis of symmetry is very important. Okay, although it doesn't tell us the vertical position of the zeros, of the vertex, it does tell us the horizontal positioning of the middle, and that's very important. Okay,